C'est bon. Bonjour.
Good morning. Thank you for staying for this new session. We're going to talk about social media, generative AI, access to knowledge. Access to knowledge is increasingly controlled by mathematical formulas, not to provide us information, but to capture our attention. And there's a risk for us to be detained, to be polarized. So here we're going to talk about algorithm and surviving algorithm. And here with us today we have Françoise Benamou, a prestigious economy. She teaches economy at Paris-Sorbonne. She is the president of the Cercle des économistes, and she has extensive expertise on media. Delphine ERNOTTE CUNCI is the president of the France Télévisions network. She is transforming the broadcast landscape in France. DREYFUS, the president of Le Monde, he was one of the pioneers in the adaptation of the press for AI. Rajesh Krishnamurthy is the CEO of Super Syria, which is the leader in digital services and digital transformation, and here we're referring to critical infrastructure. Welcome to Gaspard Guermont-Pré, Gaspg. He is a content creator and every day provides information to young people on social media, but today he will have other functions. He is the vice president of the Union for the creation of content. Adina Nivukovsky is a youth ambassador for the World Partnership for Education. She's from Finland, which is a leading player in education to media. And finally, welcome to Tito Ward. He is part of the International Fund for Media Public Interest. And he will share a very much needed vision of the world. But without further ado, Françoise Benamou, over to you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Although it's hot, I'll cut to the chase, and I will share with you 4 points to start our discussion. First of all, algorithms put us in information bubble. They direct us towards content and people we already know who share the same opinion, and this phenomenon was theorized in 2011, but it is still a hot topic today. Secondly, algorithm will enhance content sharing, the dissemination of shared content fueled by AI. There was the World Congress of Press Editors. And there's someone who criticized AI as an information predator, providing information produced by others. But without AI companies providing this information, this model can threaten the business model of the media. Thirdly, when algorithms are being manipulated by political, economic, hostile agents, they can undermine the principles of our democracy, and this is really strong in pre-election periods in France and elsewhere, and this can fuel illiberal temptations that we very well know in Europe. An experiment was done on the X to assess the behavior of American users, and there was a switch from chronological to algorithmic live feed. And we see that everything changes as the user is directed to more conservative then the traditional media messages are put down while others are put forward, and numerous studies have yielded similar results. So there was a study of New World that shows fake news about the war in Ukraine disseminated by a pro-Russian propagandist. It has been disseminated on social media, and the last narrative was really critical to France and Germany. There were 29 million views. So are we doomed to be subjected to the monopoly of the big tech, or can we use algorithms to do some good? Some people would like to have a calmer situation. There have been negotiations, agreements in France, abroad. There have been partnership with in Spain, in the US, or other players with ChatGPT. Furthermore, AI is compatible with the rules. Press and visual media have adopted covenants to ensure good use of AI and ensuring transparency, respect of IP, of people, and fair remuneration. There is a power game at play, and Europe is at the forefront. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Françoise.
Thank you very much, Françoise. You mentioned being subjective to algorithm. We talked. So how do media organize to respond to this phenomenon, especially public media, who must provide information to all citizens, especially in social media? So Delphine, ERNOTTE, CUNCI, how can you navigate this algorithmic state to protect citizens against misinformation? First of all, I'd like to comment on what François said. And I'd like to insist on the fact that misinformation, as seen by the World Economic Forum, is the second highest risk for humanity in the next 2 years. So this is not something that will happen in the future. It is already considered as a major risk nowadays. I find it really interesting to see that Europeans are right. 87% of European citizens are scared of misinformation and foreign intrusion. It is 89% in France too. So we're in line with the European average, and we're right. And France is, below Ukraine, the second country most targeted by foreign intrusions. And 8 European citizens in 10 are scared of foreign intrusions during the next elections. And France is really at risk, since there will be major elections in less than a year. Why does it matter? The European Union of Press and the Media, which influence goes beyond the Atlantic Ocean, since we do work with public radio and television in Canada. And according to European data, there is a connection between the state of public authorities in broadcasting field and the state of democracy. And this is quite a major topic, because in the world in 2005, 50% of the countries had a democratic regimes, and nowadays there are only 25% of them. Now, what should we do? For us, broadcasting media, we need to promote the most critical value, which is trust, the trust of our citizens. I mentioned public broadcasting networks, but I support private and public media. The private broadcasting media do a great job, but we must support public medias. And I'm going to tell you why. What is the media that is the most trusted in Europe and in France? In France, it is the news of France 2, and the same figures are found in Europe. As for social media, they have a 17% rate of trust, and it is 8% for the 15-24 age group. So many French people trust public media. That's why we must support them. But how do we go about it? It is not easy. Public media are being questioned in many countries of Europe. And there are many things we can do to support transparency. You need to separate facts from opinions. And remember the Lasserre report, which is a great report because it makes public media visible and expresses clearly what French people expect from us. And it does it in a very clear manner. But beyond all that, we need to focus on EU regulation, which is lacking. I was at the Assembly General of the UER last week in Prague, and we helped our local colleagues because they had a right-wing populist PM who wants to destroy the public media like every populist regime. So we went to see our colleagues and we said, you know, in Europe there are rules applied to everyone. With the Media Freedom Act, and this Media Freedom Act defines what are a public media and with conditions they work, since there was a budget cut of 50% on Czech broadcast services. So funding of public service are the following. They must be sufficient, sustainable and predictable, which is perfect. So our colleague listened to us. We had a 1-hour meeting with us. He said he had nothing, he didn't care about Europe, but I don't agree with that. And we said that we could turn to Europe, see if there were problems. We had problems with Czech Republic. And then there was quite a difficult moment. Because he said, you are right, but there is another European state which doesn't abide by the Media Freedom Act, and it is France.
Well, we'll talk about that later on. So, Louis, you direct the World. Le Monde, I'm sorry, you sign agreements with some of the platforms because we're talking about algorithms. But behind that, you have companies that market these algorithms. Did you sign a contract with the devil? There's a question of the news. Google told the editors 2 days ago, this summer, Google, I will implement something that are the AI overviews, and instead of doing a search on Google, for example, instead of having links, you will immediately have the sum up produced by the AI. Are you worried about that? No, we're not really worried about that insofar as we consider at Le Monde these algorithms and more generally these actors of artificial intelligence are an additional lever to pull out of these information bubbles and reach an audience and generations that naturally don't come to us, to Le Monde. We need to get in touch with them as we did with the social networks. And what we see today is that developing partnerships with these actors enable us to be well referenced. Why it's important to us? Well, we need that those who use ChatGPT, those who use Google Overview, clearly see the identity of our brands and how these contents come from us. Sign agreements, it means preserving our rights, making sure that we are mentioned, that we are quoted, and redistribute 25% of the money to the reporters and journalists. So strengthen our staff, and we need these algorithms if we want to avoid the media produced by professional reporters and only talk to two segments, either an elite or people over 50. The future of our media and our democracy is played with the under 30s. And it's important, essential in my opinion, that beyond what the content creators, we have a capacity, us media, to value what we do and share it. At Le Monde in 2010, when I arrived, we had 310 salaried reporters. We have 570 today, and I want to make sure that they have the largest audience possible. To do this, several conditions have to be met. you will see that the Monde strategy is quite close to that of the New York Times, who refused to sign with OpenAI. But at the same time, it signed with Amazon. The important deal that we can't consider that Amazon is more virtuous for a democracy or ecosystem than OpenAI. But anyway, they signed with them. First of all, it's important that the regulator takes a stand on this. In France, it's unfortunately, and Delphine mentioned that with the reaction of the Czech Prime Minister, it's not the case in France. We had a recent example with the PM Darcos, if I'm right, that said that the actors of the artificial intelligence have to mention their source, which enables to have a transparent negotiation by all the actors. Today, the Parliament refused to make progress on that. So we consider that the regulator, the French regulator, I'm sorry, who do you want as a regulator? The competition authority, or who do you want? ARCOM? ARCOM in France. The problem is, we don't have a regulation authority, so we'll start from that. Otherwise, the risk for democracy is that you have only a few actors in France, the most powerful, that can sign deals. What's happening in France that you have one actor who signed the deal? It's the Monde, the newspaper. Is it good for the Monde to sign a deal? Yeah. Very important, significant. Is it sound for the plurality of the media, to see that we have a lot of actors today who are faced with great difficulties? Difficult. So we need a regulator, a strong regulator. And we also need, there's this question of sovereignty also, that all the French and European actors or players in the field committed in the same dynamics. It seems to be a paradox that I can sign agreements personally with OpenAI, me, with Le Monde, with Meta and others. We'll announce more by the end of the summer, but that there be one actor with whom it was impossible to discuss. It was Mistral. And Françoise Benamou mentioned NewsGuard. NewsGuard published a survey, a study, saying that the actor of artificial intelligence who was the less reliable on information was Mistral, despite the fact that it's French. It's an iconic French company. It seems to be a paradox to see the public authorities promote Mistral. We're proud to have such a powerful French actor, but at the same time not encouraging it to accept a logic of discussion. Because we need this type of agreement. For me, the algorithm can be a factor of development. It's the case for Le Monde. We tripled the paid audience. We make profits in the last 10 years, but we need a regulator that will allow all the actors to have access to that type of negotiation, and we need to have the European actors to be committed in that direction. So, Rajesh, I think you know a lot about this. Can you say how you, because you manage critical infrastructure, how the technological industry can fight against the manipulation of information? Thank you very much. First of all, I think that the way we formulated the question is not the right formulation for me. Algorithms are not an exogenous threat. They're part of our everyday life. We consume them on a daily basis, And that's how the millions of Europeans get their information every day. For me, the real question lies elsewhere. Who designs these algorithms, and with what intention, and under what responsibility? Because today, we know that in most of the cases, algorithms that establish a hierarchy, that give access to Europeans to information, are not designed nor owned in Europe. That's the real issue. They're not regulated, not owned or produced in Europe. Yes, information will survive to algorithms, but under one condition. We need to treat the information as what it has become, a critical infrastructure. Like energy, like water, like telecoms. It's not The trust in information is not a feeling, it's a critical infrastructure. Let's take an example. An alert launcher calls a journalist. Every exchange leaves a trace, a message, a document, a connection, what have you. The identity of a source is not found in the content, but in the metadata. Who called whom, when. This information is alive on the cloud. A foreign authority can access that without the media knowing. So this media must be protected like a hospital, like an electric network. It's a critical infrastructure. The press must be informed. It's not new. You know, in 1973, Styria put on the computer the press releases of AFP. Today, we use the cloud as an infrastructure for France Télévisions. But I want to be clear on one point. The integrity, information integrity, that's your job, all of you around this table. Our trade, our job is to provide the technological means to preserve this freedom of getting information, to give a trustful information to the audience, based on trustful infrastructure. So there would be a cloud infrastructure under European jurisdiction with the protection of the data and with algorithms that are designed not with a single objective of capturing the users, and with the tools that enable to identify the source, detecting manipulations and what have you, or intrusions. But there is a key limit, an essential limit to this. No technology can replace the judgment of the people, the citizens. To establish a difference between a source or an opinion and a fact, to control, verify, check a source. Understand that an algorithm is never neutral. These rely on essential competencies, and it's true for the younger people. So our mission is simple. Yes, the information will survive. Information will survive under one condition, is that we never delegate our judgment to machines. We never transfer our judgment to machines. Thank you. So you have, the three of you talked about the youth. It's time to hear them. So Gaspard Jean-Monpré, you represent the UMICC. Algorithms is your everyday work for 5 or 6 years. Do you think that the relation of strength is unfavorable? So good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, and other platforms. Like a lot of the content creators, I started as an independent by proposing free content online. But this economic creator were entertainers, people who played video games in their room, in their bedrooms, people who talk about fashion, lifestyle, and that kind of thing. And this generation that grew with these content creator has grown up, is older, they pay taxes, they have a job, so they're seeking their information elsewhere, but on platforms with which they grew up. So these platforms are, as a majority, American and Chinese, big issue for digital sovereignty. And a lot of creators now are committed with unique. Now, one word to say that the content creators have become leaders when it comes to the format of the information on fashion, on entertainment and everything. So all the reports show this. The Reuters report shows the power of a person that was here yesterday, Hugo Decrypt, who 6 years ago was a political science student. Today he has a team of 45 people and is really on top of the information for this generation. In its wake, a lot of other actors have position themselves. Today there's a rupture in the uses between generations. We can't go back. So the idea is, how do we go along with that? How do we accompany? There's an issue with digital sovereignty. Are we at ease with the fact that a media uses artificial intelligence? 95% of its content will be at the same level of trust, or with the same library than journalists by France Télévisions or Le Monde or independent journalists. I think that we developed an economy in our bedrooms for a long time. There were a lot of oppositions between the traditional media and the content creators. Now it's a time for collaboration. The question is not older people against the youth. No, there are a lot of older people over 40 that look at seek their information on digital platforms. But the question is how we French Europeans manage to work together to new propositions involving all the citizens when confronted with foreign platforms. I'll take a few examples. I wanted to be positive here, optimistic, let's say. We proposed some time ago a format with TF1, with teams of Thierry Tullier, for example. Within the scope of the presidential election, I will have all the candidates come to my platform. And it will be on TF1, and you go decrypt. Was the first to propose to France 2 a format that's called the hidden face, interview face cachée, which is on France Télévisions, and great. And now it has an international reach, and there are a lot of content creators. We're going to talk about Seb, who make contents with Canal+, for example. So there's more and more cooperations with the legacy media and the content creators. So the question is how these content live on the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and how we position ourselves together to better share the financial value on advertisement, for example. I'll take the example of YouTube. YouTube today, which is the best actor today, the cleanest, distribute 55% of the advertisement revenues to the creators and content creators. So there's 45% in their pocket, and the RPMs and the CPMs. The cost per millions of views, of clicks, when you publish an advert is 15, sometimes 20 euros on proprietary platforms. On YouTube is 4 or 5 euros. So there's a real question, how do you continue to produce quality information on foreign platforms? One word maybe to conclude on what we're trying to do with UNIC, with this federation, UMIC. Today there are more than 100,000 people working on the creator economy. A lot of precarious people, freelancers, but also journalists, part-time workers and what have you. And today they have federated to accompany the regulation, because we fully agree that this world is imperfect. There was the law of Prime Minister Bruno Le Maire who wanted to regulate the commercial influence. We talked a lot about that. Talked about influencers in Dubai, and not enough about those who do a good job. And also with UMIC, how we protect our institutions, the CNC, the public service, but at the same time how we inspire them or propose fuel for thought and accompany these new generation media. I take the example of the CNC, which are highly representative. YouTube, Meta pay a tax to the CNC that represents about 40-60 million euros per year. It's quite insufficient, but they pay this tax. But CNC, in terms of digital content, only reinvest 3 million on digital creations. If I take another example, very quickly, these subsidies to the press. The Parisien, belonging to Bernard Arnault, gets 12 million in public aid per year. That's fine, good. The press has to be subsidized, but besides that, digital creators who reach tens of millions of people get €0 public money. So how do we accompany all that? We can regulate, but how can we also support this transformation and foster ambitious cooperations?
Thank you very much. There's another interesting topic, which is education, maybe education to media and as close as possible to schools. Edina, you have experienced as a representative of the word partnership for education. So from your experience, what can you tell us about the readiness of young people for the bias algorithm?
All right, thank you. I was just, there was a lot of good discussion and good points about the social media platforms that we are using to get information nowadays. And there are a lot of studies now that young people from 18 to 24 in Europe, the main source of single news is Instagram. And I think that one thing that when we think about these kind of platforms is, I recommend everybody the book about the start of Facebook. It's called Careless People, and it is a very in detail discussion about, or a story from a person who used to work there when they were building Facebook. They were building this platform, and she was saying that when they were building these platforms, the apartment for social impact was this ridiculous department. So there was the engineers, and there was the idea of getting these platforms to be used by as many people as possible, but the idea of social impact was barely talked about. There was no discussion about what it was going to do to democracy, for human rights, for all these different aspects. And that is something that I think that we see every day. For example, when it comes to, there is this term in Finland that we use about information pollution. And it's the fact that we have so much information from so many platforms that it's kind of polluted. We see too much. We get information fatigue. There is so much that is being told to us all the time, and it's very hard for people to kind of source out, where is it that I want to get my information? Where is it that the information that I can trust is coming from? And in that, the social media literacy, media literacy and education is what comes into play. And I think that with these platforms, with these algorithms, we're kind of having this fight in the dark now. We're talking about young people getting there should be a social media ban for young people, or like for children, or all these topics, because we are really scared about what social media is doing to kids, for example. So we're having a lot of these petitions that are coming kind of, I think, in my opinion, as a little too fast. We're trying to get like these fast results in terms of like, okay, if we don't let young people go to social media, then maybe these problems will get solved. If children can't go, or if there's an age limit and all this stuff. And I think that there are also good propositions, but also I think that with these algorithms, they came to us as a little bit of a new thing, that we kind of were caught by a surprise of how much they polarize us, how much they affect our thinking, how they are, what kind of laws they abide by, right? And I think that the more and more we know, we can be, and we should be smarter than the algorithm. We should be getting smarter, getting more educated about what's going on, how are they formed, and take that into schools as well, from young people to, like, from a very young age, for young people to understand, for kids to understand how these platforms work. Because I think that when we have legislation, it's not gonna be immediate, for example. And I think that we need regulation for these platforms, especially also in the EU. There needs to be more regulation on how they can work in our region. But I also think that education is always going to be a very, very important part in that process, because people need to get as much information as possible so they can make informed decisions on where they take their information. And some things that I think I want to emphasize from these topics, because my field of work is a lot to do with gender equality. And something that is also studied from these algorithms is that if you make a social media account for a teenage boy, it takes approximately 30 minutes for there to be misogynistic material that comes to your feed, that there can be material that encourages misogynistic or even violence against women. And it's a very shocking thing because it's not that you have to, or young men that you would have to go look for it. It comes to you and it's fed to you. And that is something that we should really stop and think about, because I also think that we already see it in action. I know that this happens in Finland, but I've read on about that it's also going in France, that the violence against women rates are going up. And we also, last week, we actually had David Pellico speak in Finland about this topic. And even in Finland, even though a lot of times Nordics and Finland are seen as this hub for gender equality, but I also want to emphasize that in Finland there was a study that was done last year that opinions of young men regarding violence against women is that 1 in 3 young men think that in some situation violence against women can be justified. And that is a shocking statistic that we get. And that is, I think, direct result of statistic that I said before, that the material is increasing. There is deep fake material that is going to be coming about all of us, that it can affect everyone. And there is also, in the past month, an article about deep fake material in a small town that was in Finland, that I think that it brought it closer to everyday people, that, oh, it can be me, it can be my neighbor, it doesn't have to be someone who's in the public eye. And this is what I think that we need to focus on as well. It's not only that if information can survive algorithms, I think that it's a question of if truth can survive algorithm, if gender, like if women can survive algorithm, if minorities can survive the algorithm. And I think that is the main question that I think also we need to tackle with education, and that we don't put young people, when they go to social media, or even kids that go to social media, they only see this radical point of view, and then it kind of shapes the way that we think about other people as well. Because if we only see radical content online, it kind of shifts this idea that when we meet people in the real life, we can assume that, oh, they think this way as well, and we don't have these discussions with each other in real life and realize, oh, there's a lot of gray area, or if there's something in the middle for all of us that we can connect on. We only think that, oh, I saw on social media that this kind of people think this way, and then we like close our minds. And I think that that is something that we really need to tackle with education, with speaking to each other in these kind of events as well. But yeah, more on that later.
Merci beaucoup, Adina.
Thank you very much, Adina. As Adina said, it can happen everywhere in the world. However, there are regions across the world where the sustainability of public media is more fragile than in others. Taida, what do you think about this change? Thank you for dedicating a panel to this topic, which is crucial for democracy as well as for sovereignty and security. A few words about my organization. The International Fund for Medias of Public Interest. It is a multilateral organization based in France that funds independent media in countries such as Moldavia, Armenia. We also work a lot in Ukraine, a country who is being attacked by Russia through misinformation. We also work in Tunisia and Lebanon. And we are convinced that every citizen of the world must access trustable and verifiable information. And so this question was raised in 3 parts. So there's firstly the offer, because we offer trustful information in the South by funding independent media, by ensuring they have enough funding to renew the business model. Because the issue here in France and in Europe is that there are issues faced by countries, by the media in developing countries, and then the issues are more complex. Secondly, we build coalitions, so we put together players in these countries, and together we address the situation in countries like Moldavia or in the global south. Those are smaller markets, and local players need to create coalition to be able to negotiate with bigger platforms. thirdly, we try to determine if we can create content by taking advantage of the open source movement by the fall of cost in some platform. We want to create new platforms that will aim to be in the public interest. And that is a target we are trying to achieve with media players in Indonesia, Malaysia, and South Africa, among others. Thank you.
So we took note of something that's not really rejoiceful. Do we have today the means to strike a new balance in this value change between the actors? Should we sign agreements? Delphine, ERNOTTE, you signed an agreement with YouTube. Today, do we have the means? You talked about the DSA also. There are other regulations in Europe. In France, we started with the États généraux de l'information, which does not lead to legislations, but can we today strike a new balance, for example? Well, the agreement we signed with YouTube does not aim at striking a new economical balance, but we start from the noting that the first information channel in France is YouTube for the youth, but also the older people. And if we want to be modern media, a media of today, we have to be on YouTube. We have to publish on YouTube like we publish on the TNT or on our proprietary platform. We did our first action on this sense was France.tv, which is a leader in France. There's an audience of 7 million each day. Do you have an algorithm you can recommend at France TV? It's not good enough, no. We're working at improving it. Yes, we have. It's human. It's as a public service, we have this balance between the algorithm, knowing that an algorithm is nothing but a tool, as you said quite rightly. We can ask it not to be locked up in a bubble, but propose things that open up. It depends on how you use it. The algorithm is not bad as such, but it's how you use it, how it's configured. So yes, we're making progress on this, but just to say yes, that of course we try to reach everybody. We have a very strong growth of our presence with all audiences. Today we cover 95% of the younger audiences, which wasn't the case a few years ago. But nevertheless, the economic model of the media, public services financed at 85% by public subsidies. But if I stand in the position of my colleagues at TF1, the private channels, the balance is not there. Gaspard explained that very well earlier on. We can't compensate with advertisement on the digital platforms what we will no longer do with the linear systems. There's a real issue with the economic model. On this, we need to continue to sign partnerships, as explained, but I think we'll have to gain momentum on that. Like at the level of the EU, of Europe. With the UER, we need to negotiate at the European level, because the relation of strength is very unequal. The more we are to be part of the negotiation, it's a dilemma. When you start first, you move faster than when you're the group. It's a fact. But nevertheless, I think that in the long run, if we can group up, we'll be more powerful. Okay. But there's the Media Freedom Act, there's the DSE, the DMA, and it's starting to work. I don't know if it's, what happened in Sweden yesterday. It's starting to bear fruit. And I think it can be a lever in our negotiations with these major American actors and Chinese actors to try to find our way, to find a model that doesn't exist today. Do you share that? Are there actors with whom you can't negotiate? Well, I'd like to step back a bit, on the value chain. I think the first thing, good to insist on that, if you want to strengthen the value chain, you need to have each of us, the editors, the public, the media, as you said, invest on their own added value. When I hear other editors say artificial intelligence will allow to reduce drastically the members of the editorial staff, they make a big mistake. The editorial offices may be afraid that it will destroy their job. We invest in editorial office, and that's why we are well referenced. I was talking to The Guardian, who was suffering from iOverview, but it hasn't lost an audience, because iOverview just erases everything that was done with robots, but the human side is valued, and we need that. It's quite important. I go along with Delphine when she says that we need to be better articulated, but I don't think it's at the level of the country. There are professional unions that we can that exist, and we can negotiate with these platforms. There's an unbalance of expertise. I often talk to the Spiegel, to the Guardian, the Corriere della Sera, major press agents in Europe, and there we managed to develop a strong relationship with the platform. There's the Spur. No, well, if you take the Spur, it's a coalition that was announced, I think, 3 weeks ago, created by the British people. It's not a coalition for negotiations. You have the Guardian, you have the FT, who signed with OpenAI, the BBC, the Telegraph, that did not sign. And so I think the idea is to share the data and articulate a position, but it's not a professional union that is trying to negotiate. We have to accept that the professional union can be a lobbying tool and can be useful, even though up to today they haven't been very efficient to make progress. But on the other hand, in commercial negotiations, I think that, contrary to what Delphine thinks, that the fact that you have one important actor in the profession that signs an agreement, it has a big advantage. It creates a market and a path for others. If the Monde hadn't signed with OpenAI and we had let the editor associations to negotiate, nothing would have happened. It's the case in Denmark, where it's an association of editors trying to negotiate. No agreements were reached in this case. And so in this case, we would lose the possibility of having additional revenue, and also to be referenced by these engines that are used massively by 85% of the under 20s. And I refuse to reach this population. So we created a precedent in France in 2 ways. These actors show that our information add value because it's paying for it. And secondly, we have considered that these financial flows could be assimilated to foreign rights, and we pay back 25% to our editorial staff. And it's not the syndrome of the prisoner. We're trying to have a role as pioneers, as pilots, let's say, like in a pilot project. So I have one question for Gaspard, because we're getting close to the presidential elections, and it's almost a past election, but there's the hope by Emmanuel Macron to ban social networks for the under 14. What do you think of that? Well, many things, but I think the importance of social networks in our political choices as citizens. I think the American example in 2024, the presidential election was named the podcast election by analysts. The formats of Joe Rogan, for example, the podcaster who works in MMA, or Candace Owen, who's a completist, who launched the Brigitte Macron rumor in the U.S. So those people were prescribers, even more prescribers than the CNN or Fox News format. And this should worry us, because what's happening in the U.S. is happens before it happens in Europe or in France. In France, we're seeing the premises of such things. There was a recent broadcaster, a great article in Le Monde, Guillaume Play, legend, who interviews Israeli representative who gives another narrative on the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts and attacks in Lebanon. So this should worry us, because when these formats do generate millions of clicks and reach more citizens than the evening news, and that should worry us. And I insist on the need to create editorial collaborations between legacy media, traditional media, and information groups that have incredible resources that use reporters, human reporters, that have a know-how to be able to talk about economic, political, climate warming and everything. How do we create these collaborations? How do we work together to get to more responsibility and more algorithmic visibility and sharing value? And this will only happen by collaborating between media, traditional media, and content creators in Europe. Thank you very much. Fortunately, time is flying. Françoise, you will conclude. We've eaten up our time. It's fascinating. So the stakes. The first stake challenge is disinformation is a major stake, and we have to make sure it doesn't develop. Second stake, education. Education to new media, to algorithms. Third stake, trust. And to do this, we have paths, we have options. I've talked about partnerships, the opening to partnerships, but with a lot of not being naive, we have to be. And the last point is regulation, an intelligent form of regulations open to these young media that don't get public aids. Thank you very much. Hope you have some very good rencontres.